Welcome to one of the few truly independent and sponsor-free podcasts on this island Earth. If you like these free first-hour episodes, consider getting twice as much with THC Plus and treat yourself to the full 2-hour interviews as they're designed to be, where things only get deeper and more interesting behind the curtain. A Plus subscription gets you 5 new shows a month and a full archive of great interviews with amazing folks going all the way back to 2010. That is the gist, though there are other details, benefits, and bonus features you can hear more about at the end of this episode or in the show notes, where you can also find the links to sign up and join the club at thehighersidechats.com. Or if you want to listen on Spotify, sign up through Patreon. Enjoy.
The planet's puppet masters almost surely have a plan. There's clearly maybe something there beyond the realm of man. And until we thoroughly tested every last close-chested view, I find the more we think we know, the less we really do. Where would we be without THC? 'Cause we know they're lying to us, just don't know to what degree. Where would we be without THC? The Higher Side Chat Show, Greg Callwood and Company.
It's the end of the world as we know it, but I feel fine. From the Sunshine State, I'm Greg Carlwood, and while the parasitic Archon-controlled elite continue to demonstrate that they were never here to make our lives better, it's sad that we still see so many among us struggling with that realization and continuing to look for happiness and meaning in all the wrong places. Because the things you need won't be served up by the algorithm in an endless newsfeed or found in another meager paycheck from an all-encompassing job devoid of meaning. And the system is more than willing to prescribe enough pills to quiet the part of your inner self just dying to get the message to the front of your mind that you are infinite consciousness having a human experience, and this life should be about much more than a whipsaw of negative emotions and stress pouring from the people and right into the hungry mouths of fourth-dimensional energetic entities pulling the strings from just beyond the visible spectrum of light. We have a choice in what content we consume with our own psychometabolism, and any day could be the day that one works to right the ship of their own life. And here to remind us of all that and more and push our understanding of this complex cosmic ride just a bit further is the legendary author, researcher, and speaker, David Icke. He's written some of the best and longest books I've ever read, from Human Race Get Off Your Knees and Everything You Need to Know But Have Yet to Be Told, to The Perception Deception, The Biggest Secret, The Trigger, The Answer, The Trap, The Dream, and last year's nearly 700-page gem, The Reveal. Just to name a few of the hits, along with what was my own Bible of sorts for many years, his 1,300-page Guide to the Global Conspiracy and How to End It. You can now find him pumping out content on his own independent platform, Iconic.com, great name. And it's been a while, but he has been here twice before in the much simpler world of 2019, once to talk about The Trigger and his deep dive into 9/11 and the Sabbatean Frankism cult, then again to get into the wider Archon-controlled reality in The Big Conspiracy the same year. And I'm psyched to see it manifesting once again. The great conspiratorial Sherpa, sage of secret knowledge and exposer of the Saturn Moon Matrix Loosh Farm infrastructure, David Icke, welcome back.
Thank you, mate. Whoa. Great intro.
I try. I got to separate yourself somehow. There's so many shows out there these days, but it is an honor every time I get to talk to you. When I look back at my angsty youth and quest for deeper truths in the very early internet days, there were really only 2 people I could find, David Icke and Alex Jones, the Coke and Pepsi of conspiracy. And I've always kind of felt that we hear this phrase that everything boils down to a choice between fear and love. And I actually think that is embodied in the 2 characters that really have carried the torch for conspiracy, or yourself and Alex Jones. What do you think about that? You think there's definitely some difference between you 2?
Oh, definitely. One heck of a difference since the Trump era, and particularly since Trump ran for the presidency the second time and right up to present day. I've been, to be honest, extremely sad to watch Alex, who was someone who was, you rightly say, banging out the basic here in this world structure of the conspiracy, who's now kind of become something else. So you had Alex Jones rightly condemning the troops on the streets and knocking doors down and what have you. And now he's supporting what Trump is doing and calling for doors to be kicked in. He's someone who has spoken out against foreign wars, again, quite rightly, and now says that he supports an invasion of Venezuela to remove Maduro. And on it goes. He's supporting Elon Musk, who is at the forefront of sales pitching the fusion of artificial intelligence and humans, which is the ultimate control, while at the same time complaining about the unfolding AI dystopia. And it's all very strange. And, this is where I'm coming from, mate. And I always have, and I always will. I'm not interested in the left-right puppet show. I'm interested in that force in the shadows that's working through both of them. And I have this belief that a journalist does not take sides, political sides, or even religious sides, to be honest. What they do is they look at information, they look at actions, they look at what people do as well as say, because they're not necessarily the same and usually aren't, and you respond to that. Now, that means that you can call out the left for wokery and imposing their will upon the population under the heading of wokery. You must call me by my preferred pronouns or you lose your job. And you can also call out the destruction of free speech by the Trump regime on the basis of people calling out what Israel is doing in Gaza and having a different opinion to the regime in power. You can do both, because what you're doing is you're responding to the actions and the consequences of those actions. You're not coming from a perspective that says, this is my side and it's okay when we do it and they're the enemy. And I think, be well aware of this, Greg, the way that we reached a point in the so-called alternative media where there was a realization that we live in one-party states. As they used to say in America, it's one bird with two wings, the left and the right. And it's the same around the world, same in this country, the UK, my goodness me. But what's happened since, for me, there was a hijack of the mainstream of the alternative media in the wake of COVID. A lot of mainstreamers came in, and there was a regression from the understanding that it's a one-party state. Actually, if you go deep enough, it's a one-party world, to the left-right puppet show. And to hear, for instance, Alex Jones, but he's not alone in this, far from it, saying the deep state is the Democrats in the United States is extraordinary, because the Democrats are one wing and the Republicans are another.
Right.
And you know what I find interesting, because of what's happening in Britain, my goodness me, what's happening here. We have a prime minister called Keir Starmer, and his handler is Tony Blair. That's how bad it gets. And what he is said to be is of the left. And what he's doing is destroying freedom of speech. Thousands of people in this country are in jail or have been charged for internet posts and their opinion. We're now having the announcement from Starmer that they're going to introduce before the end of this parliament the digital ID, which is a fundamental pillar of the digital AI control system. And all this is happening at the same time as Trump, who is of the right, Starmer's the left, remember, of the right, is doing the same and adding to it, putting increasingly troops in the streets. And so the thing to watch is not the rhetoric, because the rhetoric will be different. It's the actions that tell you the story. And what's interesting is this. When the left is in power, say as it is in Britain, or supposed left, not really, then what they do, and that's what Starmer's doing here, he targets the right as the danger and thus wants to change the law or target those who are calling out what he's doing. But in America, you've got exactly the opposite, because the right is in power, labels itself right, and so they're targeting the left as the danger and the reason that they have to be targeted. And this, if you follow history, is just the common theme. When the left's in power, it targets the right and justifies its laws and oppression on the basis of that, and vice versa when the right's in power. And so it's becoming more and more blatant the way it's playing out. And it's almost like they've passed a point where they don't care if you know anymore, because they've reached a point where they think we can't be stopped now.
Right. And I agree. You see a lot of full court press in this whole thing. They're just kind of pushing it along. And I think part of it might be because if they did let the pressure up and we did have time to get our footing and we did hold them accountable, that's when, the whole thing falls apart. So it's like, look, we've already come this far. We've broken into the house. We killed the wife. We got to keep going. We can't stop. And the dialectic is a powerful tool. Clearly, it's used on us all the time. I wanted to ask you about recent events. So the biggest event we had in a while was this very public assassination of Charlie Kirk. Of course, I just had Richard Willett here talking about all the strange syncs with that movie Snake Eyes. I'm still wondering how that kind of thing even unfolds. But as more and more information comes out, it just gets stranger and stranger. And a lot of people are looking at Erica Kirk, and now it's looking like that might have been an arranged marriage where her mom works with Homeland Security and her dad ran weapon systems for Israel. The first pageant she wins is owned by Trump. She's involved with this Romanian Angels thing that raises a lot of red flags. People are using the terms honeypot and recruiter. And I understand killing someone like Charlie who starts to go off message, if he's even really dead, that's a whole nother layer. They say if you believe that it happened at all, then you haven't gone deep enough. I'm not sure. There might be a level where you're untouchable and you're just playing a character. I know you've talked about that sort of thing, but it's really hard to understand the long game involved with like cultivating assets and placing them in people's lives and spending your whole day married to someone, like all your private time married to someone who was cultivated as an asset. And then like this whole thing you built gets turned over to them and she doesn't seem all that empathetic. It's just crazy. But maybe looking at this as a template of a wider set of protocols that they engage in sometimes, what would you say to people who are like looking at the real deep stuff that goes back years and thinking, how can this even be real?
What you mentioned there about playing the long game is very, very, very important to understanding what's happening. You see, it's my view, has been since way back in the 1990s, that what I call the global cult, this global network of secret societies, which ultimately has an interlocking leadership and direction, although the vast majority of people in those secret societies, because of compartmentalization, degrees of knowledge, they won't know the big picture at all, but they'll still play their part where necessary in advancing it, even though they don't know it exists. They'll just do it because that's the way that things work and what they're told to do. And so the question I had, this is going back now, mid-1990s, is, okay, I can see this global cult, I can see this network, I can see where it's working through left and right, I can see where it's working through corporations and governments and government agencies and the financial system and all these things, which it is. And again, all these institutions are compartmentalized pyramids. So again, the vast majority will go to work and they'll do their job. They'll do what the level above them tells them to do because they want to keep their job, but they won't really know what they're contributing to. And, so many of these very top secret technologies are produced by making the different parts in different places, often different countries even. And the only people that know how all the parts fit together are the people that eventually put the thing together and construct it. And even they may well not know exactly what it's for and what its goal is. And this is the way the whole system works. You cannot let too many people know what the game is because it starts to seep out. So you get whistleblowers, but they whistleblow from their compartmentalized perspective. If you look at all these whistleblowers, very, very few that I can recall have come out and said, this is how the whole thing works. And it's connected human reality. They don't talk about that overwhelmingly. They talk about, oh, well, I can tell you this is corrupt because I've experienced this. Yeah, but how does that corrupt connect with that corrupt and that corrupt and that corrupt to create the big picture? And where I'm going with this is that I've been saying since the mid-1990s that this global cult network is not coming from in and of itself. It's actually a vehicle within the human band of frequency, because that's all this world is. It's a band of frequency. It's a vehicle for another level of reality, another dimension, if you like, and the entities in that dimension to manipulate human society. And therefore, you've got to, when you're talking about playing the long game, okay, you can go in through the structure of the global cult, and you are getting more and more into that realm, which is projecting things forward. That is it's been described to me as like a biorhythm chart, where this happens here, this happens there, because then that will be the outcome. So you're moving into the global cult and the deeper levels of it, and you are going into that realm that is projecting forward, that plays the long game. But you go out into another dimension of reality, and you are looking at a seriously long game that doesn't even operate in the same way that we perceive time. There's so many things when you look at this and when you research this that start to become possible when you have that big panorama of the direction of human society, and then you leave the target population in just reacting to random events. Oh, what's happened now? Oh, have you seen the news? But it's being orchestrated on another level in a very, very calculated way. And I hear some people in the alternative media, in the mainstream of it, talking about how it's not really organized, this manipulation. It's a series of people and corporate entities that have mutual interests, and that's why it's happening. No, it's not. It's happening because it's seriously, coldly calculated. And so, example, we see in the public arena technology playing out. And we've reached the point now, of course, where the technological advancement is getting faster and faster and faster. No check on it. No, oh my God, we can't go any further until someone's invented the next level. No, it's just played out, more and more advanced, faster and faster. And the point is that the public is supposed to believe that that rollout is due to invention. It's due to humans randomly inventing new things. Now, does that happen? Yes. But the foundation of it is that this technology is playing out faster and faster without any let up, because it already exists. And it's existed a very long time in the underground bases and the secret projects, beyond secret projects. And what they're doing is playing it out in a sequence. And it's like to catch people out with the belief that this is about technological evolution. So it's about people inventing newer and newer things faster and faster. What they've done is they want to get inside the body. In fact, they are inside the body thanks to the COVID fake vaccine. But they want to get inside the body because they want to create a hive mind. This is what AI human fusion is all about, which is being pushed by people like Musk. They want to get in the body because they want to create a hive mind. They want receiver systems in the body, nano receiver systems actually, that interact with the hive mind, which is this gathering electromagnetic field some people call the cloud. And if you want that, then it's no good coming out at the start, even though you have the punchline already there. Not least it's coming out of this other dimension, this so-called astral dimension, into the secret projects and the underground bases. You don't come along to someone, when I was born in 1952, a very, very completely different world to the one we're in now. You don't come along and say, okay, so what we're going to do now is we're going to have a hive mind and we're going to put stuff in your body, receiver technology, so that we can interact with your perceptions and dictate what they are. People will go, what? You're going to do what? So what you do is you play out your technology, the punchline already existing, in a sequence. So first of all, you want people to have your technology in a way that they hold it, holdables. So you come out with a mobile phone originally. I mean, I remember them. My brother had one. It was about that bloody big, massive thing, like a brick. It was.
Yeah. And then you move to wearables.
You come up with a smartphone, and then you get people like addicted to it because something's coming off that, some frequency's coming off that, that's affecting the brain and creating that addiction. Some people call it dopamine, but it's this is creating addiction. And so we got them holding our technology now. So what are we doing now? Well, what's the next thing we want? Oh, we want wearables. Mm-hmm. We want to get in the body, but we'll get on the body first. So then you suddenly have all these wearable technologies, which are now coming commonplace. And then you go in the body. And one of the things you do is when people who are paying attention start to realize that there is this agenda for microchipping people, what you do is you sell them the idea that the microchip is this little rice size thing. Remember them? Where they're all this rice size thing. They want microchips inside us. And what you do then as well is you bring forward one of your operatives, Elon Musk, and you get him to start a company called Neuralink. And you say that what you want to do is connect the brain to computers, which involves taking a little piece of the skull away and having something behind your ear. And what you're doing is you're telling people to believe that that's the cutting edge of microchipping people. I remember someone interviewing Elon Musk, and they said, quite rightly, yeah, okay, but how many people are going to have a bit of their skull taken away? Oh, he says, you may not have to do that. You might be able to go in through the veins. Well, enter the COVID fake vaccine and these other similar fake vaccine, not a vaccine by previous criteria, concoctions that the Trump administration is now handing over to Pfizer and other big pharma companies. And you go in through the veins, through nanotechnology. At the same time, people are perceiving, oh no, microchipping, that's taking a bit of your skull away and all that. No. It's the vaccine. And that's why they wanted people and pressured them to such an extent, such an extreme, to have the fake vaccine. That's why people like Larry Ellison, 2 days into this Trump regime, this second one, was wheeled out with Sam Altman of OpenAI in the Oval Office to announce this up to $500 billion Stargate AI data center system. But
right, what a name, too.
Yeah, you remember what one of the things that Ellison said. He said, do you know, he said, what we can do is fantastic. You know, we can cure cancer and target cancer with AI and through a vaccine and stuff. And mRNA vaccine, he said. And now you've had this other Oval Office gathering in the last week or so, in which Pfizer was eulogized, even though the number of people they've killed with their vaccine, or fake vaccine, like some of the others, is absolutely fantastic. So what it's all about, getting you to look that way while they do that. Right. And Neuralink is a complete misdirection. The real microchipping, if you like, it's much more than that, is happening through the veins, not through the skull.
Yeah, I think that's a really great point. And when it comes to the long game, having digested your work since high school, it's like, yes, I see that a lot of the agenda is a long game. I see that they even write books that are like 100-year plan, and you get the guys to go through the right universities, you get them in Skull and Bones, you do a little blackmail there, and you get them into the pipeline of being the architects of the long game plan. And they're in the Bilderberg Club, all the think tanks, but I guess there's just something about placing women in people's lives. It just seems really weird to me with the Erica Kirk thing. But I want to go back to what you said about this realm being a vehicle for higher entities. So in recent years,
higher
in
terms of frequency compared with you.
Right.
But the dregs,
not morally superior.
The dregs of frequency, really.
Yes. Important point. So I remember back in my life a few years ago, I'm sure you feel the same. The things I was talking about were the craziest things that anyone in my friend circle was talking about. Now you get online and you see the wildest ideas thrown out there. And just because they're epic and weird and wild doesn't mean they're accurate. But with the attention economy and the commercialization of conspiracy culture, you get people just coming up with a wild thought, throwing it out there like it's truth. And suddenly, like, we're not the weirdest guys in the room anymore, because the theories have gotten so crazy, like the whole idea that, some of the shootings are total theater and no one dies. But then, okay, so this idea of this plane being a vehicle for other entities. So I've read some wild claims recently that if you know how, you can actually create ritual conceptions and ritual births that are done with certain cosmic alignments and timings, that if a woman volunteers to be this kind of vessel, like literal vehicle, you can know that the spirit that inhabits that body of that baby is actually an archon or some dark entity that they've been in communication with that actually strengthens the communication because you're bringing that thing into a meat suit in the physical realm. I'm curious what you think about that. We know about Jack Parsons and the Babylon working, and that attempts like this have been made, but there's really only one or two stories that penetrate the culture. I'm curious how much of that is happening behind closed doors. We know they care about bloodlines, but I mean, the idea of occult rituals, engineering births to actually draw down these entities into a physical body, do you think that's going on or possible?
100%. The way I've worked since I consciously started this in 1990 is to realize, and the more you know, the more you realize how little we know.
Yeah.
Because if you are a few and you're trying to target and direct and control the many, the last thing you want the many to have is the knowledge or anything like that you have. So what you have is two worlds. One world is this global cult, which, like I say, is fiercely compartmentalized. Most of the people in it don't know the big picture. And then you have the world that cult, it's in a circle anyway, has created. And so those two worlds, the difference, the massive, massive difference between them, there are many, but the foundation one is knowledge. So what you're doing is you're passing on highly advanced knowledge, technological knowledge, knowledge of where humanity is being taken, and knowledge of the nature of reality itself to the generations of the cult. And they are often family generations because they like to keep it in the family. They can then bring their children up from birth to be part of it. And so that is passing on this advanced knowledge. At the same time, this cult, not least through people like the Rockefellers and Rothschilds and others, have created the sources of information that their target population has. They've created the media, they've owned the media, they've just moved in on the alternative media since COVID, big time. They've created governments and social media, the Silicon Valley giants, etc. And so the idea is that you're passing on very advanced knowledge through the cult and suppressing knowledge through the systems of communication and information that you control. And one of the great ways and one of the essential ways that you must suppress that knowledge for the population is suppressing their sense of the possible. The more you can suppress the sense of the possible, the more when people like me, people like you, uncover what's going on in the cult and pass it over to the population and say, this is what they're doing and this is how they're doing it. The population, because of their squeezed lifelong sense of the possible, go, but that's crazy. That's not possible. You can't. No, they can't do that. No one can do that. Oh, well, they can. They just don't want you to know that they can. And so you've got this massive division between the people who are targeted and their level of knowledge and the people doing the targeting and their level of knowledge. And so always worked on the fact that whatever I know or think I know, there's always more to know. And what that does is keep you diving down the rabbit hole. You don't get to Trump v. Harris and say the Democrats are the conspiracy. You don't stop there. You go on and you go on. And when people start laughing at you and ridiculing you, well, you just keep going anyway, because your interest is not a statue or a round of applause. Your interest is what the hell is happening and how we can do something about it. And so on this, if you like, journey of discovery, I've gone on the basis of whatever I know, there's always more to know. And so what don't I know? That's what I want to know next. And it takes you deeper and deeper. So you go into the fact that there are non-human entities manipulating human society through this cult. And the whole foundation of human control is actually originating and coming out of another dimension of reality. And, these dimensions are not like chests of drawers. When people are talking about God or other realities, they look up, don't they? No, it's sharing the same space. All infinite reality is sharing the same space that I'm sitting in now. But this vehicle, this biological computer, as I call it, is specifically designed only to decode, not least visually, a tiny, tiny band of frequency called visible light, which is so small, it's ludicrous. The almost entirety of infinite reality, infinite light cannot see. And yet, within infinite light, the light spectrum that we can see is everything that we are saying is the human world. When I'm looking around now, I'm seeing form. And form is what visible light can see, this tiny band of frequency, which is all that humans can see unless they go into a psychic state. So I'm looking at lights, I'm looking at a wall, I'm looking at a desk and a computer, and that's form. But everything between those forms, I can't see. To me, to everyone, it's empty space. It's not empty space. It's energy on a frequency that visible light cannot decode, cannot see. And so we are looking into other dimensions all the time. We call it empty space. You have this situation where if you think you've got it, then you're just confirming you haven't, because none of us have got it. We are seeking to get it. We are seeking more and more knowledge, more and more understanding. But given the limitation of this form for decoding reality, not by accident either, by the way, how can you ever think you've got it? You can only seek more and more awareness.
Yes.
And so when I started to realize that this global cult existed and was real, my next question was, as I went into the rabbit hole, when did it start then? Because obviously it's not been around for 5 minutes, 50 years or whatever. When did it start? And you start to go back and you get into places like ancient Babylon and Mesopotamia, etc., and Sumer. And then you think, hold on a minute. People have been born. They've played a part in advancing this cult agenda, which is the incessant centralization of power. Look at where we've got to with that now. And then they've died. And then other people have come in and they've played a part and of advancing it further, and they've died. And then others have come in. And so what you look at it and you think there has to be a force that spans this whole period that's been orchestrating and basically organizing all this and where it's going. And that's when you go into other dimensions of reality, like the astral realm, which doesn't have a physical body. Physical body as we do, a dense physical body. They have a form of physicality, but not the same way as we do. And so their span is the whole period. They don't come and go, they span the whole period. That's where I'm talking about. If you go into this other dimensional level, they're orchestrating the whole thing. They can play the bloody long game because they are the long game.
Yeah.
Down here, we come and go. Why do we come and go? Because the human body, the biological computer, is encoded to have a limited lifespan. You imagine if you had a vastly longer lifespan in a human body. the chances are so much greater, you'd suss it.
Yep.
You eventually you'd go, oh, I can see it now.
Right.
What they want is a limited lifespan in this reality, this human reality. So you don't suss it. And that's why, when I started out on this journey in 1990, I've been working full time ever since, like 6-7 days a week often, to research and to, hopefully with an open mind, go deeper and deeper in the rabbit hole so you can get some kind of understanding of how this dynamic works and what this control system really is.
Yes. And you've done a great job. I mean, I would say that most people listening have been following you for a long time, many, probably decades, a couple of decades for sure. And like you said, there's always more to know. I definitely feel that way. It's the whole iceberg theory thing. You see these memes where people put an iceberg up and it's like introductory stuff about 9/11 and JFK, and it goes deeper and deeper. And then it gets so deep into stuff that I don't even know about because I'm not really on 4chan or the dark web where some of this stuff remains. Well, let me ask you, if you're talking to a bunch of people who are familiar with your work and have followed you for years, and you're still continuing to seek out new pieces of the puzzle, what would you say are some of the most recent aha moments for you? What are some of the most recent puzzle pieces that you've been able to fit into the big conspiracy that you were even surprised to find?
Just very quickly, the previous question about, and it does connect into it, the previous question about what we would call possession, really, these entities taking over human bodies. Mm-hmm. Well, if you look through history, possession is a common theme right the way back into the ancient world. Why? Because it's real. And what this body is a vehicle. It's a vehicle for consciousness to experience this reality. See, without this vehicle, my consciousness, your consciousness, everyone's consciousness is vibrating so fast, well beyond this realm of reality, that my consciousness couldn't pick these spectacles up, because the difference between the frequency of the spectacles and the frequency of my consciousness is so vast. I mean, never the twain shall meet. It's like radio stations on the dial, unless the radio station frequencies are very close to each other, they all operate in the same space on different wavelengths, and thus they don't interfere with each other. That's how this reality works. And so we take on these vehicles so that we can interact with this band of frequency we call the human world. And what happens is, because they are encoded to have a limited span, when the vehicle ceases to function, what we call death, what happens is, when this biological computer, which is decoding this reality for us, and this limited reality, when it ceases to function, what happens? It stops decoding this reality. And our consciousness finds itself in another reality. This is what near-death experiences describe all the time. And there's a lot more to know about that. And that goes on to the question you've just asked, which I'll come to. And so death is not death of you, the I, consciousness, it's the death of the vehicle. And, what's interesting to me is the way that this technological revolution mirrors technologically the way that we experience reality and how we experience reality. So you have an internet, say a Wi-Fi field, and the Wi-Fi field is a radiation field encoded with information that looks absolutely nothing like we see on the screen. But the computer decodes that Wi-Fi field and puts it on the screen in a completely different form to the way it exists in the Wi-Fi field. And when the computer dies, oh, my computer's died, and the screen goes blank, what happens? It's died. In other words, it's ceasing to decode the Wi-Fi field. And thus, it's died in the way that the biological computer dies. It ceases to decode what is actually a simulation field, as I'm sure we'll get into. And so we living in a reality without the vast, vast, overwhelming majority of people, because of this oppression and suppression, knowing what that reality is or how they're experiencing it. And what it means is that this vehicle, which our consciousness is experiencing, can just as easily be experienced by another consciousness. And if you think that what we call the mind or the soul is on one level is an electromagnetic field, some people call it the auric field around the body, anything that can attach to that field can start to influence the way we think, the way we perceive, the way we feel emotionally. It can possess with its version of reality that which it's connecting with. And you know, when you have this really extreme, I've seen it, this really extreme level of possession where the actual body face starts to change. And it's like, what the heck is going on? How can that happen?
Yeah,
Well,
one of Epstein's victims said she saw that with him one time.
Yeah, exactly. So what you have is this body field, which appears to be solid and flesh and blood, and on one level it appears like that, but actually what it is a field of information. And if you can attach to it powerfully enough, you can infuse the possessing entity, can infuse its information field so powerfully that its information starts to override the information field that we call the body. At which point the body starts to reflect the possessing entity's information field, its state of being, what it is. And so you see in these extreme possessions how the face, I've seen it, how the face changes to reflect the possessing entity and override the information field of the possessed entity. And what you can have also, this is why they are obsessed with these bloodlines and interbreeding, the so-called elite bloodlines, is they are hybrid fields of information. Part of the field is human, and that's the one that is projected into the world, except when they're among like people. And so people look at that person and they'll say, oh, he's human. Oh, he's obviously human. Look at him. But at certain situations, and not least these rituals where they are absolutely among like minds and like people, there's a shift of one energy field to override the other. And that's called shape-shifting. And people say shape-shifting's ridiculous because you can't go from a solid body to another solid body. It's not possible. Well, you know what? No, it's not. But that's not what's happening. And, you know, to really appreciate what this reality is, you have to appreciate how it works and how we are, in effect, exactly like the desktop computer, decoding an information field into a completely different form on the screen. Where's our screen? It's in here. It's in the brain. So what's happening, this is mainstream science, is that the five senses, which is our way of interacting with this field, they pick up waveform information, vibrational information. That's what the field is. And then they turn it, all the senses the same, they turn it into electrical information. And the electrical information is communicated to the brain, and there's different parts of the brain that specialize in decoding the different senses. There's a visual senses round here, I think, at the back of the brain. And that's why if you damage this part of the brain, you can go blind or you can't see. What that really means is you're not able to decode anymore. And what the brain then does is put together these senses into a sense of reality. Just as the computer decodes Wi-Fi, we are decoding this field of information that we call the human world. And therefore, the manipulation potential, if you know that, and the population experiencing it does not know that, is absolutely infinite. So when I'm looking at someone, I'm looking at their human field of information, their electromagnetic field of information. And my five senses pick it up. They turn it into electrical information. They communicate it to the brain, and the brain transforms it into digital holographic information. Holograms. I mean, look at how sophisticated they've got. You can hardly tell the difference with the best of them between this reality and a hologram, a holographic reality. Why? Because this is a holographic reality, and it's all going on in here. We think it's out there, and I grant you that's the way we experience it. Everything's out there, but it's actually going on in here. And so when I'm looking at someone, I'm looking on a five sense level at their field of information. This then goes through the process I've just described, and the brain transforms that field of information into a holographic form, which to us looks like a physical body. That's why everyone seems to have a physical body. And if you are a shapeshifter, okay, that part of your field, when people look at it, what they're going to decode? They're going to decode a human body. But when that information shift takes place, as it does overwhelmingly in rituals and stuff, then suddenly another information field appears. And you now start decoding that. And to the observer, who is seeing the world as physical, even though it's all going on in here, someone has shifted physically from a human to a non-human form. But that's not what's happened. What's happened is there's been a shift in the information field, and you are now decoding a different information field. And this is what happens when, and you know, I didn't kind of sit in a darkened room working this out, or I think there's shape-shifting. It's been a long journey of talking to people literally all over the world who have experienced this. You mentioned there Juliette Bryant with Jeffrey Epstein. Yep. Experience she had. But people would be staggered. Of course, it doesn't get in the papers and on CNN and Fox, but people would be staggered at how many have had this experience of shape-shifting. And then you go back, like I said earlier, into the ancient world, and you see the same recurring descriptions. And so, to say the least, we are experiencing a reality that's nothing like the way we seem to be experiencing it. And this is why I've been so vehement in calling out the alternative media, the mainstream of it, because what has happened, particularly since COVID, because let's have a look at that. Certainly in England, in my experience, COVID was a massive wake up for lots of people. Mm-hmm. I was walking through on protests through the streets of London with maybe 100,000 people or more at its peak, who had started to realize that the whole COVID scam was exactly that, a scam, a hoax. And all the restrictions being justified by it. And so you're this cult. You look at the situation and you conclude two things. One, this is getting out of hand. Too many people are waking up. And where's the potential of where that wake up could go if it continues? And two, we can't target these people, these waking up people, any longer through the mainstream media, because they won't have it. If we tell them to believe what the BBC and CNN and Fox News is telling them, they're going to laugh at us. So where do they get their information from? Oh, this unfolding alternative media. Right. So what we've got to do is we've got to get control of much of that. So they bring the people in, they fund them, they algorithmically promote them massively.
Yes.
And they get them to squeeze the sense of what the conspiracy is. So suddenly the deep state is now the Democrats. It's about politics and finance and the deep state. And you try to hold them like a barricade from going into those areas where you really don't want them to go.
Yeah.
And so here we are believing that the conspiracy is the Democrats and the savior is Trump, when the real conspiracy, Greg, is the very reality we think we're experiencing when we're not. If you can hold them here, they ain't gonna go there. And what happens is, because of this limitation, self-imposed actually, of perception, anyone that starts talking about the sort of things I'm talking about now, the great majority of people go, "You're bloody mad, mate. What's he talking about? It's ridiculous." But actually, you can back it up with facts. And more, mainstream science is starting to pick up some of these things, not least the simulation reality that we're experiencing. So
Right.
So we have this situation where you are living a reality that appears one way, but is actually nothing like that way in the way that you're experiencing it. But your focus of attention is not seeking deeper into the rabbit hole, into these realms of real understanding. They are focusing your attention on the myopia of Trump v. Harris and deep state and all that stuff. Not that that doesn't need to be addressed. I address it all the time. But it's not the only way. And, you can focus on the twigs while at the same time being aware of the forest. And unfortunately, much of the alternative media, not least because of what I'm talking about, is focusing on the twigs but can't see the forest.
Right. Yes. And really, really great points. It does seem like, as addictive as the dialectic is between left and right, it's also very addicting to just be rooted in the material world. We know they like to invert everything. So, of course, keep people rooted in a physical paradigm because it's actually anything but. And we know that the things you're saying about frequency and decoding are accurate, because we do have situations where people hit their heads and then they come out saying, "Hey, I can smell color and hear numbers and see sounds." You take the right drugs and the same kind of thing happens. People go to a concert on LSD and they're like, "I could hear colors with the lights and stuff." So that's, again, it's like scrambling your decoding. If that was physical, then those experiences wouldn't be there. We wouldn't have those testimonies. So yeah, everything's somewhat holographic. I totally agree. And the manipulation happens just beyond the 5 sense reality. And it's true. Alternative media probably is trying to protect that secret more than anything else. It's like, well, of course, the old legacy media systems are burnt. So we got to get Tucker Carlson a podcast. We got to get these guys to overshadow the iconics of the world, these networks that are trying to just get to the straight truth. I know we got to start wrapping this thing up. I did read the reveal. I just wanted to point this out. Not really a question, but for people listening, I love in the reveal how deep the Saturn story seems to go all throughout it. And you talk about the recent work of Robert Temple on plasma. And this is just a quote where you say, you say, "Some scientists quoted by Robert Temple now believe the rings of Saturn contain charged dust particles structured together to form crystals. Temple says in A New Science of Heaven, Dust and dusty plasmas are ubiquitous in nature, occurring in interplanetary and interstellar clouds, dust rings around planets like Saturn, and on the surface of the moon. Saturn is a fantastic frequency broadcasting system. And it's just like, wow, validation once again, vindicated. This is just more confirmation of things David Icke's been talking about for decades. And this is really the last thing I want to slide in here. So
just very quickly,
when we did this,
just very
yes,
quickly, Greg, that's why Saturn symbolism is all across human society in the form of
amen,
the six-pointed star, the hexagram, the hexagon, and the cube, or these things and others, but they're key ones. That's why they're everywhere. That's why that's why the Rothschilds put the Star of David on the, as it's called, on the flag of Israel, because where did the name Rothschild come from? It came from the German red shield or red sign, and it was after the six-pointed star on the Rothschilds' home in Frankfurt, Germany. And what is the six-pointed star? It's Saturn worship.
Boom. And I also hear you talking about, of course, the whole thing of Sabbatean Frankists, and the Sabbatean part of the Sabbatean Frankists goes back to Sabbatai Zevi, who was this messianic figure imprisoned in 1666, and Sabbati, it apparently means Saturn in Hebrew. So right there, and like, that's pretty easy to verify. I did it before I signed up to do this. And 1666, so this is just one last little detail. With the two sides being the wings of the same bird, we were going to get Build Back Better, 666. Instead, we got the Big Beautiful Bill. But what was it really called? The One Big Beautiful Bill. What is that? That's 1666. So, you know, it really is wild. So, but as a way to stick the landing here, when we first did this 6 years ago, I was not even really thinking about being a parent, but now I got two, and it just makes me reflect more on how we really only know the people we see in the world by the parts of them they want to present. Yeah. And as a new dad, I've started to look harder at the children people raise. Joe Biden, Will Smith, Donald Trump, all sorts of public figures have children that seem damaged in one way or another, some really screwed up. And to see Iconic as such a family affair, and to see your kids all seeming like well-rounded, good-natured, intelligent, capable people, it really is the dream. And I do think it is a testament to your true character. What advice would you have for conspiracy-minded parents like myself who are looking at the next 20 years? And I know this is a matrix question, but we are living a physical reality. When you look at the next 2 decades and it looks so rough, what do you say to parents who have young children and you're just like, man, I got through a lifetime. I wonder how these toddlers are going to get through a lifetime. I guess we figure it out. But what would you say to kind of impart some knowledge given the fruits of your own parenthood and looking at what you've done with your kids? What would you say to other people who are struggling?
Well, first of all, it all depends on how many people awaken to this bigger picture. Because for reasons I talk about in the books, awakening to that picture has itself a cumulatively massive effect on the power of this simulation to dictate our reality. But we're going to face some real challenges, and people need to stick together, and they need to realize that these challenges are coming, and that if we're going to look our children and grandchildren in the eye, then we have to put ourselves into a situation where we imagine what we would say to them if this whole control system reaches its fruition, when they ask us, what were you doing, mummy, daddy, granddad, grandma, when all this came in? And so what will be your answer? You know, people are fearful of disobeying authority or going against authority. But if we don't, collectively, then what this cult wants, this cult will get. Because it has to. If we see fascism and communism and all these tyrannies, they're not brought in by communists and fascists. There's never enough of them. They're brought in by the acquiescence of the population to the fascists and the communists. That's what happens. Either we're enticed by belief in what they tell us is real, or we fear not doing what we're told. And that's the point. And it's good news, really, because it means that collectively we're in control of our destiny, collectively at least. Individually, if we look at it deep enough, but collectively, we are in control of our destiny because there's far more being manipulated than there are manipulators. But if we go on believing what authority tells us, of looking for a new savior like Trump, my God, or just not wanting to obey but fear not doing so, then they'll get what they want. And so, it's time to summon the backbone and together not having it. And in terms of parents, I mean, for me, you can see a child as a little boy or a little girl, or you can see them as consciousness that is evolving as a physical experience into an adult. And so on one level, yes, they're your children in this matrix reality, but really they are consciousness, and that has to be respected. Yes, you can guide them and you can protect them in this period that they need guidance and protection, but they have to go their own way. They have to decide what they believe and where they want to go ultimately, because you don't own them. You are looking after them in this important period where they need looking after. And so I have never tried to bring Gareth and Jamie, my sons, and Kerry, who we fortunately lost, into this arena. I've not. When they've asked me questions, I've given them my opinion, but I've always said to them, you decide what you believe and no one else, but let that decision be made on looking at a wider evidence and not just what authority tells you. And as a result of that, they have gravitated to this arena because it makes sense to them, not because I've pressured them into doing so. But of course, you're absolutely right. To have people around you who you can totally trust, like Gareth and Jamie, is an enormous bonus when there's so many people around that want to bring you down.
Yes, well said. Words of encouragement. I love it. Thanks again for making the time. It's always a pleasure. I can't think of anyone in my life that I've learned more from or hold in a higher regard. Some people for periods of time, they rise to the top, then you realize some shady shit about them, and then you realize that was maybe the wrong way to go, but you're still standing tall. And I think that's great. So remind people about Iconic and the new book. I read The Reveal, the last book, great as well, but tell them where to follow up.
Well, if you give Gemma, Gareth's wife, an address, we'll get a copy of the new book, The Roadmap, to you. Set the printers now.
Thank you.
That, I think, it's almost like, well, if this doesn't make a difference, then I don't know what to do next, sort of thing, because I'm really, really pleased with the way it turned out. But iconic.com, well, davidicke.com is my website, personal website, which where you get to see all my videos and news stories every day, etc. But iconic.com, I'm really proud of. It's run by Jamie and Gareth, and it's something that looks at the evidence and looks for balance and look to make judgments on what's happened, not on who's made them happen. So we will call out the left and we'll call out the right and we'll call out the center and we'll say positive things about all three, depending on the actions that are taken and their impact on the world. And unfortunately, there's not many areas of the alternative media. There are some, absolutely there are, present company included. But the main thrust of the alternative media doesn't go down that road. It goes down the left-right puppet show. And so it is an antidote to that. And also, through the documentaries that we do, I've done quite a few of them. It looks at this deeper area of the nature of reality itself and goes into these deeper areas we've been talking about today, as well as the day-to-day news shows, which we have as well. So I'm very proud of that. And I'm very proud of my boys for what they've done.
As you should be. Well, awesome. I look forward to that book. Thanks for being willing to send it out. And there you have it, folks. The true godfather of modern conspiracy culture. Keep fighting the good fight and take care.
Oh,
David.
I will, mate. You too. Cheers, Greg. Bye.
Cheers.
All right, there we have it. I love it. Man, David Icke, he is the GOAT, no doubt. Although maybe a poor choice and untimely use of the term GOAT. He might not appreciate that, so I'll spell it out. He's the greatest of all time, if you ask me. One of the few guests I could have where I would assume that not a single listener could say, who's this guy? My younger self would never believe that I got to talk to David at all, let alone 3 times to date. And I can't expect him to remember me or any of our previous interviews because we all know I'm just one of many and they all bleed together. But I wish that wasn't so because our first 2, I think, went a bit deeper than this one seems to have. And we spent way too much time, I think, on the fundamental basics. I thought the introductory comparison that I started with Alex Jones and David Icke as the Coke and Pepsi of conspiracy, it was fun, but the real depth is in the fear versus love comparison. I absolutely think there is a fundamental difference where David can tell you about all the same darkness and stuff within the system that Alex would, but he also says it's ultimately a dream and your job is to be the best you can be, look inside yourself and embody the best version of yourself and enjoy the ride. Whereas Alex will tell you that you need a gun and the looters will soon be at your doorstep and it's time to rally the troops and take back the country. I know he has talked like that many times. He might have cooled off in recent years, but that's definitely the Alex Jones vibe. So even if 80% of the material about the elites and Epstein and the royal family and archons is all the same, the tone is far different. And I thought that was a creative way to start David's 10,000th interview, but he kind of took it more in the direction of left versus right, which I didn't expect because we know that game. Left versus right is not exactly what I was going for because I was trying to insinuate that we've already been down the rabbit hole. We have listened to both of these major figures enough to be in the advanced class. And I tried to strategically use the language in the intro to make that abundantly clear. So maybe it just didn't get us into the conversation I thought we'd have as early as I wanted to, because lately he has been super critical of this mainstream alternative media. And of course there was some of that, but I just would have liked to have gotten more detailed and gotten right in there earlier in that regard. But where he is right is that this new mainstream alt media is largely still rallying against the left when the left is pretty much spinning out right now. And the technocracy is being fast-tracked under the guy that a lot of these people have interviewed and not asked any tough questions to. So there is a political affiliation, of course, with this new alt media that isn't David's fault. Instead of it being truly independent and outside of that dialectic, like we should all try to be, I certainly do, which makes it just hard to be too critical of David for going there. But I would acknowledge that we spent a little too much time on the introductory life lessons, and I know you guys are past that, and I don't want you to think I set out to condescend. The flip side is that it's very easy to get sucked into seeing the lesser politically aligned party as a literal enemy, that maybe reminders aren't so bad when the pressure to think and be along those lines is consistent and the tricks used to further that divide can be pretty sophisticated. My thing has always been, I'm not anyone's enemy, but I can't control the way a brainwashed person sees me. If someone is conditioned to dehumanize and have disdain for someone not on their team, well, being outside of the game altogether can be seen as just as bad as being on the opposite side of it. So it's like, I don't need this lesson. A lot of other people who might be inclined to develop hateful feelings towards me are the ones that need to hear it, and they, surprise, surprise, likely never will. Oh, the irony. And I have always kind of returned, though, to David Icke as my true north. He was doing great stuff with Credo Mutwa, really bringing in the indigenous perspectives to verify a lot of the claims he was making. I never see Alex do anything like that, but David also started this journey with a download experience, a persistent, ethereal presence pushing him along the path. And I think he might have even set a Guinness World Record for the longest presentation. I'd have to look that up, but I know he's gone for 7 to 10 hours live on stage, almost a dozen times, I think. Very small group of people who can do that. I also think David has navigated the ability to make a living with this stuff really well. Critics can call it a grift and say, well, there's money in conspiracy, that's why they all do it. That's just not true. Well, there never was money in it until Trump and COVID. It was a fringe, niche, a small subculture where anyone who's doing this kind of work could easily find success in another, more popular lane. There were times when I considered doing a gaming podcast instead because it comes with so much less baggage, and I know I could do it better than IGN, and Giant Bombcast fell out, and I could have taken ads without any sort of friction, and I could have avoided all the heaviness of the conspiracy world, but whatever. Just making a point. David has done an impressive job, and his work ethic is outstanding, and if anything, if he was being strategic in a capitalistic way, he would have held on to the big secret a little bit longer. He told us early on that the core truth is that we are fractals of consciousness having a human experience, and multi-dimensional entities are feeding on our fear and steering the elite to create more negative energy for them. Tale as old as time. Well, when you say that so plainly and then you still have to have a career for like 2 decades, well, it becomes hard to give people the next tantalizing secret. But the truth is the truth, and I think what he describes as a boiled down nitty-gritty of our situation is pretty accurate. So I got a lot of love for David Icke, and I'm glad we could have some provocative current event talk to fold in too, because that's one thing we can always keep fresh. Clearly, he wasn't talking about Erica Kirk in 1995. So in the Plus show, we did get into some more juicy stuff. Nick Land and the Dark Enlightenment. I'm hearing Nick Land's name more and more ever since that interview with Isaac Weishaupt, who I believe was the first one to really bring it home for me. But seems like that's going to be a big part of David's new book, as he pointed out. We also talked about reincarnation and the life cycle and the wheel of Samsara. And we got into some of David's latest insights into the child abuse cult and his take on the nature of evil. And of course, some other stuff too. You know how we do. We keep the party going, truly ad-free and independent. In higher side news, what is going on? Well, you might have noticed the new background lately with the newspapers, if you're a watcher and not just a listener. I thought the fake licensing deals for THC was a funny way to use the screen because I already had a logo on the desk. But even just in the last 6 months since I started at the studio, I've seen way too much AI stuff. I like the little intro I made. I like using the music, but I'm getting away from it in all other regards. I never used it for show notes, which I think the written word is probably my least favorite application of AI. But either way, I didn't want to do that anymore. So I came up with the idea of a montage of all the classic conspiracy newspaper headlines, and I put it together myself, and I love it. Sadly, my time recording at the studio is over. Classic capitalistic problem. The owner was basically uninvolved in the business and had two really great, knowledgeable employees who were really doing all the work and getting all the clients and everything. And then, of course, he didn't want to pay them. So the skilled labor got replaced with cheap labor. No shade at anyone there. I like everyone I interacted with, but I just started with a higher caliber of quality, and that quality decreased, and so I had to say I'm out. And we've had quite a few issues with the interviews that are currently in the pipeline, but by the time they're out, you won't notice. And honestly, traffic has also been really bad here in Tampa, and sometimes a guest has wanted to talk a little bit more, but we can't go overtime because the studio is booked right after me. There are some issues that aren't anyone's fault, but the core problem is the loss of the two guys who knew what they were doing. Luckily, I have a good relationship with them. They like THC's content, so it's highly likely we find a way to work together when they get out on their own. But I'll probably just be making a bigger investment around here to make things work at home, and we'll move on. Some of the biggest names in content creation and streaming don't have setups that are really any more complicated than what I'm doing here, so I guess I don't really need to overthink it, and I'm just going to do what I do. The biggest expense and complication isn't even the recording. It's the delivery with a private, independent streaming platform that I've had to come up with outside of the YouTube system because that can't be relied upon for an income in the conspiracy space. Somebody tell the other guys. But it is pretty damn slick, and I am proud of what we've built. And I also just got word that the VPN issue has been resolved. If you've had any problems getting the THC Plus videos to load because of your use of a VPN, that is a thing of the past. I contacted support. They got back to me, and they removed this security feature for THC's videos. Yeah, so we come out of the gate, or try to, at a high level, and then we improve based on the feedback. And now I think it's just stay the course, work on my home setup here, and start working on more solo stuff and bonus content. Also, in higher side news, we had that meetup in Tampa. It went quite well. Actually, one of the guys from the studio who was in the booth most of the recordings actually showed up and got to meet some listeners too. And about half the people, I would say, were folks I had met before, either at the last one or at the High Springs event with Gordon. I heard some great stories. We talked about Neville Goddard, and I mentioned I've been trying to take his advice and fall asleep while thinking about a goal or desire, or actually not while thinking about the goal or desire, but he says, fall asleep in the feeling of the wish fulfilled. And then someone told me a story of using that trick from Neville and having it work. Visualizing himself counting out stacks of $100 bills and getting an unexpected check for $10K. You really have nothing to lose by trying it. You're just laying there in bed trying to fall asleep. Seems like a good opportunity. Another dude is likely going to guide me and my wife through a crossbow hunt on his land. I think killing our own meat is something everyone should do at least once, so that's cool to have that opportunity. And another one of the good stories I heard was from a guy who had experience in the far north of Greenland and said that it's absolutely true that the local people are pretty open about the fact that there is a mysterious unknown civilization of white-skinned people that live inside the earth, somewhere even further north, and they're known to help the locals when needed. If you get lost in a snowstorm or you have some kind of accident out there, they've been known to bring you into a shelter like the mouth of a cave or something until they can send you back out. So yes, we've heard these rumors before, but I got to talk to someone who was only a degree or two away from the source, and that's awesome. This is what the meetups are for. Everyone's got a story or two, or can add context to something, or verify a rumor. And it's great to be in a room full of people all having something to share, or at least being open to bizarre things. It makes for a much richer conversation than most of us are having on the regular. And then when we went out to smoke, one of the guys, actually the guy with the land, whipped out a simple pipe made out of a bamboo stalk, which is great for me to see because we have bamboo on the land here. And I've read some horror stories recently about lead in cheap glass, and it leaches when you heat it up. And I tend to smoke joints anyway, but I'm taking in a lot of excess paper smoke, So now I'm aware that bamboo reeds actually have a wall in them, and you just pierce that with a knife so that the smoke can travel through and you don't get the ash or the cherry coming back at you. And then you can just toss it when it's done. And I love that. Just one of those little life hacks for a stoner I would have never known. So speaking of meetups, let's go and look at the ones on deck. Damn, we are getting down to it, but we got the Helsinki, Finland meetup on the 19th of November, just about a week away. And then there is one that is a THC/RSPM Rune Soup Premium Membership meetup that is happening back in Austin, Texas at the Austin Beer Works. I love it. So it seems like those who met at the last event when me and Gordon were present are trying to get something going again. All right, HigherSideMeetups.com. Make one with very little effort or pressure, and the people will come. I think we could all use more experiences off the screens, but that's just me. And as for the last show review, that's the other thing we do before we call it in. We got to talk about Hakeem Anwar and taking back our tech. It was doing better the other day. So, be that as it may, right now it's sitting at a 4.4, and that's kind of low. Sad to see, but I did expect it. I just think everybody knows that our tech is compromised, but we've already let it happen. And I just don't think a lot of people care, sadly, even conspiracy-minded people. They don't want to lecture on this, and they are well aware of the arguments for changing this habit. And what are you going to do? That is a big part of why it's low. Others said it sounded like a long ad. I understand that, but honestly, almost every guest comes on any podcast to promote something. A book or a YouTube channel or a Substack. And I guess when it's a physical thing, it hits a little different, even though it isn't actually much different. Also, a product like his takes a little time to explain. So we talked about it in depth and more than once. And I was going to save my personal experience until the wrap up, but he mentioned it. So we got into it. And my experience wasn't exactly a glowing endorsement. And I saw some people criticizing the markup of the phones because the above phone offers Google Pixel phones de-Googled and running on Graphene OS, but they also do provide some of their own above phone software apps, and they also provide a lot of information and onboarding, and that has value too. Yes, you can buy a used Google Pixel and install Graphene OS yourself, but a lot of people don't feel comfortable doing that. And I'm glad a company like theirs exists that makes the offer. That's all any entrepreneur is doing, is making you an offer. And if you find value in it, then you take part in it. So I think there is value in what he's doing. And there's a lot of ways for an entrepreneur to make money, but at least this is aligned with empowering people to renegotiate their digital privacy and data sharing. It's just one of those things. I tried to make the conversation a little more unique from the typical technocracy conversation by folding in a few other things that I found from his podcast and in the news. But what are you going to do? So to each their own. I have no reason to oversell to anyone. I was pretty clear that I had to revert back, but I wish the best for them and the company. It's not something that I want to see fade away. But also, like I said then, I don't even think data privacy is the most important aspect of our relationship with our phones, but I already went off on that. So 4.4. Hopefully the great David Icke can bring us back to baseline. Thanks for listening. Check out Iconic if you want more David Icke and Richard Willett, and I'll see you next time. I've done my part. Your move, Archonic influences, reptilian-possessed elite, and Saturn moon matrix manipulators. Your fucking move.
Is it accidental how things end up? Or is life ritually planned right from the jump? It's